Hey there, hope you're well. Welcome back to Verbose DevOps. Today we're going to talk about one of the most common Kubernetes errors, which is image pull back off. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it and we're going to go straight into a demo. So very quickly, whenever you create a new pod or container, what actually happens is kubelet running on the node will need an image for the container and it will pull it from what's called a registry, and if it has any problems it's going to show failure messages. First it will show the message error image pull, and it will then keep retrying the image pull, and that's called exponential back off. So it will try after a few seconds and then wait a little bit longer before the next retry, and then a little bit longer for a maximum of 5 minutes until it reaches this stage as image pull back off, when it will basically just stop retrying and the pod will just be stuck and do nothing. So there's a few different reasons this can happen, and these are the main ones. In your deployment, for example, or wherever your podspec is, your podspec will show the image repo, also the registry, sometimes the name and the tag. And if there's a bad detail there, or incorrect, or some part of it is missing, typically due to a typo, then it'll throw an error. Quite obviously the destination is wrong. Also, you can have a problem with auth. So it can be your credentials to authenticate, or it can be incorrect or missing permissions, i.e. authorization. So if there's something wrong here, that can be an issue. Also, if you exceed the rate limit of the registry, then it will block you if you just hit it too often, and that can happen if you have a lot of applications, maybe all going from the same registry. And there are various ways around that, but I'm not going to go into that. Another one is network connectivity. If the network is completely blocked between the cluster and the image registry, or slow, then it just won't be able to pull the image. And another one, not so common, is low node disk space. So the node needs enough space to store the image so that it can then be used in containers, in pods. And if it's pretty much out of space, then it's not going to be able to do that. But this is unlikely. You've probably got more issues. Something we've got to remember when we do this is the image pull policy. I'm going to refer to that in the demo, but it affects the behavior of whether you are going out to the registry, or if you're not even bothering to do that and just looking locally to see if already the image is stored in the cache. I'll refer to that in the demo, don't worry about that. So it's demo time, and the two examples I'm going to cover are the one where the podspec image reference there's an issue, or network connectivity. I'm going to on purpose block the network. I'm not going to cover credentials or permissions because there's a lot of different ways of authenticating to an image registry, and it's just beyond the scope of this. And the other two are relatively uncommon or difficult to simulate, so forget those. So let's move to the demo. But if you haven't already, please, we're new, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you can. Let's go to the demo. I got two windows open here. The bottom window is going to be our watch window. We're going to see real-time information there on pods, and the top window I'm going to drive everything else. So let me just show you here on the cluster. I've got two. These are all the pods here, and I've basically got two apps running on here, and one app is running in the ImagePullBackOff namespace, which is good practice to have your own namespace for each app, and the other one is running everything in the default namespace, which is bad practice, but for the purpose of our demo it doesn't really matter. So let's start with, clear the screen, let's start with the namespace ImagePullBackOff, and this is an app with several different microservices: emoji, votebot, voting, web. I'm just going to focus on this one here, emoji, because this is the one I've been doing my testing on. Okay, so let's down here start to monitor this. So I'm going to say ImagePullBackOff, get the pods, and watch for changes. Okay, now what I'm going to do first of all is I just want to show you that if we do a kdescribe, sorry, let me say ImagePullBackOff, and we do a describe pod on this first one up here, so let me copy and paste that. I want to show you there's a whole bunch of stuff here, right? But you can see here that there are some events, and it pulled the image and successfully pulled it and created the container, and then it started the container. So we will come back here to this command, which was describe pod. It's super useful. The deployment itself doesn't tell us much, but the pod that we're concerned with will give us a lot of info about pulling images. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually delete this pod. So we described the pod, but I'm going to just edit that and delete the pod so we can see what happens. And down here what happens is you can see that pod, which was JS2BJ. It was terminating state, and actually a new pod went pending, container creating, and then running. So if I now look at the pods, I'm just replaying up here, and you can see there that there's a new pod running and the old one is still in the terminating status. It actually takes a while to terminate. If I run that command again, you can now see that one that was terminating is now disappeared. So we're just left once again with a single emoji pod, and it's running. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to edit the deployment. So if I go kn ImagePullBackOff, edit deploy for short, and it was called emoji, wasn't it? So we're going to edit the deployment called emoji. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the image, which is in the podspec. So I'm going to press / which is used for searching in Vim, and then type image and press enter, and that's the first instance it found, which is just a bunch of metadata, last applied configuration. We're going to ignore that. I'm going to press N to find the next instance, and this is what we wanted. Okay, so we're in the spec containers image, and what we see here is, first of all, we see the registry, which is an external registry. L5D is there's a vendor called Linkerd. This is their own registry, and in there there's a repo called boyantio, and in there's an image called emoji service, and the tag is version 11. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to press I to insert or to edit. I'm going to change this emoji. I'm going to pretend there's a typo. I'm going to call this emoji. Okay, and we're going to escape. I'm going to save it. So :WQ right quit, and pay attention to the bottom, because I think things might start happening immediately. And there you go. What you can see already is there's a new one, KP22J, is starting to be created, and immediately there's an error image pull, and that was very quick. So we now should be getting this exponential back off, and it should have retried, and it looks like it did it, and it went into ImagePullBackOff state. Now what you're also going to see is, let me just show you point in time right now. Status. Oops, I think I've done something wrong there. Get pods, and you can see there error image pull. Yeah, so it's actually officially still in the error image pull status, and eventually that will change to ImagePullBackOff. One of the weird things is I still don't understand why, when you look at the pod events, it actually shows several ImagePullBackOffs after each error image pull. That's something I haven't determined, but officially it stays in this status and eventually reaches ImagePullBackOff status. If I replay that command, and you can see it's now in that status. So it kind of looks a bit weird from an event status when you look down there, but when you look at it from up here, you'll just notice that it stays in this while it's retrying, and eventually it reaches that when it gives up. And we can confirm that if I go clear. We can confirm that by going to describe the pod. So let's do that. Describe the pod, but I'm going to get rid of this because that's the old pod. The new pod is KP22J. Okay, the whole pod name is different, so let me copy that. It's not just the end, obviously, it's a bit more than that. And there we go, we get this pulling the image, fail to pull the image, fail to resolve the reference, and if we look more closely, it says, well, it says not found. And it doesn't know that it's just the image name that wasn't found, but it's looking at the whole thing. So the registry, the repo, the image. And now what it's not saying, it's not giving any errors about not being able to reach the registry, network errors or anything like that. And if you look here, error image pull back off, and it says here back off pulling image. So it's definitely not trying anymore to do anything there. So how about we go and fix this? So we need to do a kn emoji photo. Sorry, let's just scroll up. It's much easier. We're going to edit the deployment. So there we go. Edit deployment emoji / image n escape. Here we go. Scrolling along. Let's fix this. I to insert or edit emoji. That's corrected. Escape. :WQ. Enter. And you can see already stuff is happening. And it's terminating that pod there, the problem pod. But you may notice it hasn't created anything new. So if we do up here, kget pod and emoji photo, that original pod that was working it's still there. So that's why Kubernetes hasn't deleted it. But for example, if I were to do a kdelete pod, -n emoji photo, it deletes it. It now starts to make a new one, ZRS2M, and within 3 seconds it's running. No problems at all. And obviously it's back working again. It managed to successfully get the image. So that's great. So that's an example of a typo. Oh, and by the way, I think we've still got the same issue like before. So if I go kget deploy, kget pods, I should say. It always I don't know. This cluster seems to have a big problem deleting all pods. It will eventually get there. There you go. It's now deleted it. So it's just a bit delayed. It took about 20 seconds or so. So all good. So that's an example of a typo. Now let me show you another example of something different. The other app that was in the default namespace. Now remember, we can go n default, but that's already assumed. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to start down here watching these. So we're -w, sorry, not deploy, pods. Okay, we'll leave that running. So you can see here, we're concerned with the author deployment. And if I do kget pods, then we can see them there. This deployment actually has 3 pods, but all the other ones, including the one we're looking at, has only a single pod. That's the one we're concerned with. And before I go and simulate this network problem, let's have a look at the deployment authors. Sorry, let's edit it. That way we can really have a look at it. Let's go to the image. Oops, let's type image. There we go. Now this is slightly different. You may have noticed there's no image registry reference here. And you probably already know that means that it's using the Docker Hub, the classic original Docker registry that everybody was using before people created other registries. So it's just assumed that it's going to be Docker Hub. Now what we do have in here is it's in the repo called boy_antio, and then the image is called books app, and the tag is latest. Oh, and by the way, the image pull policy is set to always. So what that means is, don't look locally to see if it's been pulled before, but always go to the registry. The other example was also the same. I just didn't mention it. You can actually have it set so to look locally and don't even go out to the registry if it exists already in the cache. But for the purposes of these testing that we're doing right now, we definitely want this to be always. And actually the default behavior of Kubernetes, if you set it to latest, it will always go out to the repo anyway. It will always be always. Because potentially the version can change, so it wants to definitely check with the external image registry. But in this case, the author has said, hey, always do this anyway. That's what I want you to do. Even if you have a fixed version in your tag, I always want you to go out and check no matter what. That's something they specifically asked for. You may think that's inefficient, but actually it's only going out there to do a check, and if it determines that the one locally is the same as the one remotely, it will still use the previously downloaded layers that are stored locally in the cache. So it's not expensive in terms of traffic bandwidth. It's cheap, and it's a good way to check that you're using the right image. So in our case, what we need to do is we need to block access to Docker Hub, and that's what we're going to do. So let me show you that here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go sudo vim etc hosts. So remember, this is the node that we're on right now. It's a single node using a lightweight Kubernetes distribution. And what I'm going to do in here is, this is effectively a block list. A block list or a blacklist. So I'm going to put in here 0.0.0.0 for Docker Hub. So Docker Hub publishes the list of URLs that represent it, and that's how I got these. It's on a website. You just have to type in allow list. So hub.docker.com, registry-1.docker.io, and there's one more, which is production.cloudflare.docker.com. So some companies block everything by default, and you put this in an allow list or a whitelist. But in our case, we allow everything normally, and I want to have a few exceptions that are blocked or blacklisted. And in this case, I'm doing that because we want to simulate that you can't reach Docker Hub. So I'm going to save that. And just to give you an example, if I do a ping on registry-1.docker.io, which is one of those URLs, then it shouldn't try to go externally. It's actually looking internally, because I put 0.0.0.0. It's kind of, this is the loopback address. It's trying to look internally, which is the wrong location. So it looks like we have connectivity, but this is just saying we can ping ourselves. It actually doesn't know how to reach Docker Hub anymore. It just doesn't know that yet, okay? So let's simulate this now. If I show all the pods again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete a pod. I'm going to delete this author's pod. So copy, paste, and pay attention down below to see what happens. Because when you delete a pod, Kubernetes should try to recreate a new one. That means it's going to have to pull the image, and it's going to fail. So delete the pod. And if we look down there, okay, so far nothing happening. So let's just look at the pods again. And there we go, error image pull. Now I wonder why it didn't tell us that. Can you spot the error here? So we didn't get notified about this new pod here, which is kind of interesting. Oh, it looked like that terminal crashed. Okay, that is super interesting. Oh, okay, we're back now. Not sure why that happened, but anyway, I've restarted that. So yeah, it's now in well, it was in error image pull when we did a get pods, and when I ran this command again, it's actually in a watch state. There you go. It's gonna flick back and forth. See here, still error image pull. But I think, as we know, the events will eventually make this status be in a permanent status of error image pull. So if I replay that again, image pull back off, sorry, permanent state of image pull back off. There we go. It's now just fully backed off. If I describe that pod, And we should have what we had before. Not yet, but I expect it to go there. I expect it to eventually say backing off, which it said before. So let me replay that. Not yet. But look at this, by the way. This is a different error to what we had before. It's similar up until this point. Failed to do request head. That's the URL where it's trying to get the image from, and it says dial TCP. Look up on this domain, on this. So DNS is working because it knows what the external IP is, but it says no such host. By the way, I'm just going to run again that command, and there you go, back off pulling image. So yeah, it can't find that because we blocked network connectivity. And by the way, it would be the same thing, because this is another tool that you can use. It would be the same thing if I ran this command, docker pull. I'm just looking, sorry, for the image name. So boy Antio books app latest. And it says the same thing. To be honest, you could try and pull on a different URL, like a hello world or HTTP echo or something, and you would just get the same thing. So a similar error message, connection refused. You can see in our case we blocked it, but the same thing, connection refused. So let's go and restore this now. We're going to edit again with Vim, etc hosts. And I'm going to select the line, go to the line, I'm going to press DD to delete the entire line, and then save it, escape, right quit. And I don't see anything happening below, so let's just do OK get pods. So as expected, actually nothing will happen, so let's delete that pod. So I'm going to copy that and do OK delete pod, and we should expect now, hopefully this will work again when it recreates a pod. And there we go. And the old pod is in a terminating state, but the new one, this S6P4H, went pending, creating, and now running. So if I do a get pod again, there you go, running. And actually the other one, the old one, terminated in a pretty quick fashion. And if I now run, by the way, that docker pull command again, it should look quite different. It should resolve, and there you go. It's now downloading those layers. Docker and Kubernetes have their own cache, so although this image has already been pulled locally in a cache in Kubernetes, with Docker it has its own cache, so it's pulling it again. And yeah, obviously it had no problems either. So yeah, I hope this gives you a good flavor for ImagePullBackOff, some of the common causes and some of the troubleshooting that you can do. Run docker pull from your laptop as well to see if that works. You know, it could even be DNS, right, like I mentioned, or it could be that somehow there's a problem reaching the registry, or if the registry is up, it could be that, I don't know, someone's deleted the repo or even deleted images there. That is also quite possible. So I hope you enjoyed this. As I mentioned before, we're new, so please give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe, and take a look more at the channel. Would really appreciate that, and hope you enjoyed this video today and all the future videos. Take care and have a nice day.